Professor Putterman. Paging Professor Putterman.
It's time. We better hurry.
The adventure begins here.
Wait for me.
But first, our explorers must check into the P.J. Putterman Library. Today's explorers are Eric,
Professor Putterman, to the exploration station, please.
Marquis, David.
All devices are now ready.
After checking in, our explorers will make their way to the exploration station.
Welcome.
With a little help from technology and some instruction from me, Professor Putterman, school founder and world explorer, we're going to discover the heritage, the people in every corner of our great country. Today they'll discover the West.
Alaska, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming.
Hey, Marquis, do you have change for $1? I need to let my mom know when the exploration station closes.
I think so.
Ooh, what's that?
Abuelita's coin.
Huh?
It's from my grandmother, mi abuela. Abuela is the Spanish word for grandmother. She gave it to me when she moved here from California.
Will it work on the phone?
I wouldn't do that if I were you, Eric.
Why not?
Well, because if you did, you might be seriously overpaying for your phone call. You might have a real Spanish doubloon here. Let's find out.
Grandma says it's been in her family for generations, but her family's from California. How did it get there?
I see that this coin could be...
Nearly 400 years old, dating all the way back to 1542.
Hey, here's something else. It might help us solve this mystery.
Ah, yes. Spanish explorers called conquistadors. They sailed along the California coast in 1542. Did I ever mention to you that my middle initial C stands for Cabrillo? Yes, I'm named after the famous Spanish conquistador Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo. See? He was searching for a waterway that many people thought that would connect the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean when he sailed along the coast of what is now called Southern California.
Wow! My grandmother's coin first came to California with the Spanish explorers.
Were there people already living in California when the conquistadors arrived?
You bet! The Spanish explorers ran into many Native American tribes on their explorations. In fact, at the time, Native American tribes populated pretty much all of the West.
Long ago, the Chumash lived in Southern California along the Santa Barbara Channel. This was the tribe that Cabrillo met first. The Miwok lived in the Central Valley, and the Hupa, Yurok, and Karok lived in northwest California. Farther north, the Chinook lived where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean, in what is now Oregon and Washington. The Ute and Shoshone lived in the mountain states, and the Cheyenne and Crow tribes lived in Wyoming and Montana. It is believed that thousands of years ago, an isthmus, or a narrow stretch of land, connected Asia to North America. People from Asia crossed over that stretch of land in search of food. Over time, they made new homes for themselves throughout North America and the West. Once these tribes settled, they used their natural surroundings to survive. The Native Americans hunted animals for food and clothing, and they used plants and flowers for food and medicine. The tribes that lived near the ocean or near lakes depended on fish and other water creatures for food, and the tribes that settled farther inland used the rich soil for farming. The lives of Native American peoples changed drastically after the Spanish conquistadors came to the West. The Sacred Expedition of 1769 had a major impact on them. José de Galvez, an officer of the Spanish king, and Father Junipero Serra, a Spanish missionary, set up missions in California to teach Native Americans about the Catholic religion. Many Native Americans worked in the missions. They were taught to farm, but they were forced to work long hours and were exposed to new and deadly diseases by the Spanish. These missions represented new settlements for Spain and the beginning of other European settlements in California. Spain was not the only European nation to hold property in the West. In 1803, the United States government bought the Louisiana Territory from France. This territory stretched all the way from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. Americans knew very little about this land and land west of the Rockies. Much of this new territory was mysterious and unexplored. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark were sent by the government to explore this territory and the Rocky Mountains. Before the two men reached the Rocky Mountains, they met Sacagawea, a trapper's wife. Since Sacagawea belonged to the Shoshone tribe, she became a valuable guide for the two men as they tried to find their way through the mountains. Sacagawea spoke English and helped Lewis and Clark communicate with the Native American tribes they met during their travels. With Sacagawea's help, Lewis and Clark reached the Pacific Ocean in 1805, where they built Fort Clastop, near what is now Astoria, Oregon. Not long afterward, pioneers in covered wagons started to make difficult and dangerous journeys over the Rocky Mountains, across the Oregon and California trails to the west. Some headed west in search of religious freedom. The Mormons crossed the Rockies and settled Salt Lake City, Utah.
Hey, I know another reason people traveled west. Gold.
David, you're late.
I know, but look what I've discovered. Gold. This came from the rocks of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Where's Professor Putterman?
Right here, in California, where it all began. You see, in 1848, a carpenter named James Marshall at Sutter's Mill accidentally discovered gold while building a sawmill on the banks of the American River.
The news of gold at Sutter's Mill spread very quickly. Soon after, many people came to California seeking their fortune. These people became known as 49ers because most of them moved to California in 1849. People from all over the United States and the world came to California looking for gold, and the population just grew. In 1848, there were only 800 people living in California. In 1849, there were 25,000 people, and by 1852, there were 250,000 people in California. With so many people, small towns instantly became big cities. Even after the gold rush, cities in California continued to grow. San Francisco became a popular destination for people from Mexico, Italy, Germany, France, Russia, Japan, and China. Chinese immigrants were the largest group to move to San Francisco. So many moved there that a part of the city became known as Chinatown. But California was not the only place people found gold. After the gold rush ended in California, gold was discovered in other parts of the West. It was found in the Colorado Rockies near Pikes Peak. The city of Denver actually grew around this discovery of gold. Gold was also found along the Yellowstone River in Montana and in the mountains of Idaho and Alaska. Towns called boom towns quickly came to life wherever gold was discovered. These boom towns usually had funny names like Rough and Ready or Bedbug. One boom town was even named You Bet. Just as fast as these towns formed, many were deserted. Once the gold was gone, the people were gone too. These ghost towns are scattered throughout the West. Life in the West was hard for everyone. Out West, women had to do things that before had only been done by men. Women earned respect for all of their hard work and strength, And soon, the women in the West gained a new independence. This is why the West played such an important part in winning the right for women to vote. In fact, in 1869, Wyoming became the first state that allowed women to vote. In 1916, the citizens of Montana elected the first woman to Congress. And in 1924, Wyoming citizens elected the first woman governor in the United States. The rush to the gold fields of the West influenced the entire nation. After the gold rush, some people returned to the East, but others stayed and made the West their home. There were a lot of people traveling back and forth between the East and the West. Because of this, in 1862, Congress decided to build a transcontinental railroad. This railroad would stretch across the country and connect the East to the West. This was a huge task, and it needed a big workforce. The Union Pacific Railroad hired many immigrants from Ireland and other European countries to help it build tracks westward from Omaha, Nebraska. The Central Pacific Railroad hired many Chinese immigrants to help it build tracks eastward from Sacramento, California. This group of workers faced big obstacles when they reached the Sierra Nevada mountains. Dynamite had to be used to blast tunnels through the solid rock. The tracks were often laid on steep, rocky banks, and the workers had to build bridges for the train to cross. The two tracks finally came together in Promontory, Utah, on May 10, 1869. To mark the event, the last spike driven into the railroad tracks was made from gold. Once the Transcontinental Railroad was finished, people and goods could cross the country in just over a week. Before the railroad, it could take months. The mountains of the West made it difficult for people to come to the West before the railroad was built. Still, even today, more people live in the flatter areas of the West. Mountain land is often too steep and rugged for building or for farming, and it's more difficult and expensive to move goods over mountains than on flat land. So, many farms and large cities are built in valleys or on plateaus in the mountainous states. One of the most difficult areas to settle in the West is the land that would become Alaska. The Inuit and Inupiat immigrated to Alaska from Asia a long time ago. It is believed that their ancestors crossed over the isthmus like the ancestors of other Native Americans. The Inuit were also called Eskimos. They had an interesting way of travel. They rode on sleds pulled by a team of dogs. In 1784, people from Russia crossed the Bering Strait in search of furs. The Russians traveled along the coast of Alaska and claimed ownership of all this land. They settled on what is now called Kodiak Island. In 1867, the United States bought Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. Americans didn't really travel to their new land until Alaska's gold rush in the 1890s and early 1900s. In 1959, Alaska finally became a state. Now, Alaska is the largest state in our union, but it has the second smallest population. This is mostly because of its extreme weather, rugged conditions, and remote location.
But wait! Let's not forget about another important part of the West, Hawaii.
Aloha. Did you know that the Polynesians were the first people to arrive in Hawaii? Yes, they came here in their canoes from their Pacific Island homes nearly 1,000 years ago.
The Polynesians settled on the 8 islands now known as Hawaii. Each tribe was ruled by a different chief. But in 1810, King Kamehameha brought all 8 islands together into one nation. In 1778, Captain James Cook became the first European to discover Hawaii. After his arrival, many traders from Europe and the United States made their way to the islands. In the 1800s, people from all over the world went to Hawaii to build churches and schools or to work in the sugarcane fields. By 1886, fewer than half of the people living in Hawaii were Polynesian. In 1898, Hawaii became a United States territory. Then in 1959, Hawaii became a state. Over time, people from all over the world, especially Asia, have moved to Hawaii. Because of this, and because of its location in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, Hawaii has a great mix of cultures.
But Professor, when I think of the West today, I don't think of Spanish gold doubloons or even about islands. I think of bright lights, Hollywood, and movies.
Well, that's because the warm and sunny weather that the West Coast has almost all year round is perfect for filming movies.
Many people move there for the warm climate and the great beaches. You know, as regions go, the West has one of the most diverse climates.
The library will be closing in 5 minutes.
But apparently, climate is a subject for another day, explorers.
Please take all your materials to the checkout desk.
Bye. See you later.
Bye-bye.
And thank you for exploring the West.
Discover and explore the rest of the regions of the United States. Call 1-800-483-3383 for 100% educational videos, or visit our website, www.schoolvideos.com.